My own son looked me in the eyes and said, "Dad, you're a burden." My wife agrees. Can you imagine hearing those words from the child you raised, the boy you sacrificed everything for? I was standing right there in the doorway, clutching grocery bags I had just bought for his family, for his household, and those were the words that came out of his mouth. Not, "Thank you," not, "We appreciate you," but, "You're a burden." And he said it inside the very house I bought, with my own money. The house where I had hoped to spend my remaining years watching my grandchildren grow up, the house I purchased outright so he would never have to worry about mortgage payments or financial stress. The house that represented every dream I had for our family's future. Let me tell you something about burden. Let me tell you what real burden looks like. Real burden is working 16-hour days in a factory when your back is screaming and your hands are raw and bleeding. Real burden is skipping meals so your child can have new shoes for school. Real burden is working 3 jobs while going to night school because you want to build something better for your family. That's burden. But apparently, to my son, burden is having a father who loves him enough to give him everything. I worked my whole life to give that boy a future. Every single day for 37 years, I walked into that factory knowing that each hour of labor was building something for him. I saved every penny I could. I drove the same beat-up truck for 15 years because I was putting money aside for his education, for his wedding, for his house. When other men my age were buying themselves nice things, taking vacations, enjoying the fruits of their labor, I was building a foundation for my son's life. I paid for his house in full. Do you understand what that means? In this economy, in this market where young families are drowning in debt and mortgage payments that stretch for 30 years, I handed my son the keys to a beautiful home with no strings attached. No debt. No monthly payments hanging over his head like a sword. Complete financial freedom. I gave him what most people can only dream of. But it wasn't enough to just buy him the house. Oh no. I wanted to make sure he and his wife had everything they needed to start their marriage right. So I even moved into the smallest room, just to give him and his wife comfort. The master bedroom, the spacious living areas, the beautiful kitchen, all theirs. I took the tiny back room that barely fit a single bed and a dresser. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself that seeing them happy was worth any personal discomfort. And yet, to them, I was nothing more than a nuisance. Every morning when I made my coffee, I could feel their irritation. Every evening when I sat in the living room to watch the news, I could sense their resentment. They whispered about me when they thought I couldn't hear. They made plans around my absence. They treated me like an unwelcome guest in the house I had bought for them. Do you know what it's like to feel unwanted in your own home? To walk on eggshells around people who should love you unconditionally? To see eye rolls and hear heavy sighs every time you speak? I started making myself smaller and smaller, taking up less space, speaking less, trying desperately not to be the burden they clearly thought I was. I cooked my own meals so they wouldn't have to worry about feeding me. I did my own laundry so I wouldn't add to their household chores. I tried to time my showers and bathroom use around their schedules. I even started eating dinner earlier so they could have their family time without the inconvenience of my presence. But nothing I did was ever enough. The resentment in their eyes only grew stronger. My daughter-in-law, the woman I welcomed into our family with open arms, the woman I treated like my own daughter, she was the worst of all. She never spoke to me directly anymore. When she needed to communicate something, she would tell my son, who would then relay the message to me like I was some kind of tenant who couldn't be trusted with direct conversation. She would clean around me as if I were furniture, moving my things without asking, making it clear that my presence was disrupting her perfect home. The home I bought for her. The home where she lived rent-free because of my generosity. The home where she slept peacefully every night without a single financial worry because I had eliminated their biggest expense before they even had to face it. I started spending more and more time in my tiny room, just to avoid the tension. I would lie on that narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how it had all gone so wrong. I had pictured family dinners and holiday celebrations. I had imagined helping with grandchildren, sharing stories, being a beloved patriarch surrounded by love and respect. Instead, I was living like a ghost in my own house. But that day, that terrible day when he looked me in the eyes and called me a burden, that was the day everything changed. I had just returned from the grocery store where I had bought food for all of us. I always bought groceries for the household, never just for myself. I would carefully plan meals that I thought they would enjoy, always considering their preferences, their dietary restrictions, their schedules. I walked through the front door with those bags, feeling good about the fresh vegetables and nice cuts of meat I had selected for the week. I was looking forward to maybe cooking dinner for them that evening, hoping to contribute something positive to the household. And instead of gratitude, instead of appreciation, I was met with those soul-crushing words. "Dad, you're a burden." My wife agrees. The grocery bags felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds in that moment. I stood there in the doorway, probably looking like a fool, just staring at this man who had once been my little boy. The boy I had taught to ride a bicycle. The boy I had stayed up all night with when he had pneumonia. The boy I had cheered for at every baseball game, every school play, every graduation ceremony. For a moment, I felt crushed. Completely and utterly destroyed. A father cast aside like trash. I felt like everything I had worked for, everything I had sacrificed, everything I had built, it was all meaningless. I had failed as a father. I had failed as a man. I had become exactly what they said I was, a burden. I somehow managed to set those grocery bags down on the kitchen counter. I don't even remember walking to my room, but I found myself sitting on the edge of that narrow bed, staring at my hands. These hands that had worked so hard for so many years. These hands that had built the life my son was now living. These hands that had signed the deed to make him a homeowner at 28 years old. The silence in that house was deafening. I could hear them talking in the living room, my living room, the one I had paid for, but I couldn't make out the words. I didn't want to. I knew they were probably discussing how to get rid of me, how to make their problem disappear. But that night, as I sat alone in the silence of my tiny room, something inside me shifted. The crushing pain was still there, but underneath it, something else was growing. A cold, hard resolve. A clarity I hadn't felt in months. If they wanted me gone, I would go. But not empty-handed. Not like a defeated old man shuffling away with his tail between his legs. If they thought I was a burden, they were about to learn what a real burden looked like. I had been thinking like a father, like someone who owed them something. But I wasn't just a father anymore. I was a property owner. I was a man who had made a significant financial investment. And that investment was not performing as expected. I opened the drawer of my small desk, the only furniture that was truly mine in that house, and pulled out a notebook. I started writing. Not angry scribbles or emotional outbursts, but careful, methodical notes. I wrote down every financial contribution I had made to that household. The down payment, no, the full payment for the house. The property taxes I had been paying. The utilities that came out of my bank account. The groceries I bought week after week. The home improvements I had funded. Then I started making phone calls. Quiet calls during the day when they were both at work. I called lawyers. I called real estate agents. I called the county clerk's office to confirm exactly whose name was on the deed. And you know what I discovered? Everything was still in my name. The house, the property, all of it. Because in my generosity, in my desire to provide for my son without burdening him with legal complexities, I had never actually transferred ownership. Legally, financially, officially, they were living in my house. They weren't homeowners, they were beneficiaries of my goodwill. Beneficiaries who had just told me I was no longer welcome. The very next morning, after they had both left for work, I called a realtor. A woman named Margaret with an excellent reputation and a no-nonsense attitude. We met that same afternoon, right there in the house. She walked through every room, noting the excellent condition, the desirable location, the recent improvements. She told me the market was hot and houses like this were selling quickly. "How soon do you want to move on this?" she asked me. "Immediately," I told her. "I want this sold as fast as possible." Within days, the papers were signed. Margaret had found a cash buyer, a young couple who fell in love with the house the moment they saw it. They were pre-approved, eager, and ready to close within 2 weeks. The price was fair, actually better than fair. I would walk away with enough money to buy myself a nice little place and have plenty left over for a comfortable retirement. My son had no idea. He thought I would leave in tears, probably moving into some depressing senior living facility where I would wither away in guilt and shame. He thought he had won. He thought he had successfully removed the burden from his perfect life. But I left on my own terms, with everything that was mine. Every penny I had invested in that house was coming back to me. The freedom I had given him was being revoked. The security I had provided was disappearing. The gift I had given was being returned to sender. During those 2 weeks before closing, I had to be careful. I couldn't let them know what was happening. I continued my normal routine, shopping for groceries, doing my laundry, staying quiet in my small room. But inside, I was planning my exit strategy. I found a perfect little townhouse across town. 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a small but efficient kitchen, and a cozy living room with a fireplace. It was in a nice community with other people my age, people who might actually appreciate having a friendly neighbor. The best part? It was completely mine. No shared spaces, no tension, no walking on eggshells. I arranged for movers to come on closing day. Professional movers who would efficiently pack up my belongings while my son and daughter-in-law were at work. I wanted everything to be done cleanly, quickly, without drama or confrontation. The night before closing, I barely slept. Not from anxiety, but from anticipation. For months, I had felt powerless, unwanted, diminished. But tomorrow, I would reclaim my dignity. Tomorrow, I would show them exactly who had been supporting whom. Closing day arrived. I met Margaret and the buyers at the title company at 9 in the morning. The paperwork was straightforward since I owned the property outright. No mortgage to pay off, no liens to clear. Just signatures and a cashier's check with more zeros than my son had probably ever seen on a single document. By 10:30, it was done. The house was sold. The new owners had their keys. I had my money and my freedom. I drove back to the house, their former house, and met the movers. They were efficient and professional, carefully packing my clothes, my books, my personal items. Everything that was truly mine. I left behind the furniture I had bought for the house, considering it part of the package they had enjoyed while living there rent-free. By 2 o'clock, my belongings were loaded into the moving truck. I did a final walk-through of the house, checking each room one last time. The master bedroom where they had slept without a care in the world. The kitchen where I had cooked countless meals for them. The living room where I had been made to feel like an intruder. I felt no sadness in that moment. Only satisfaction. Only the sweet taste of justice. The locksmith arrived at 3 o'clock, just as planned. He was a professional Margaret had recommended, someone who understood the sensitivity of situations like this. He quickly and efficiently changed all the locks, front door, back door, garage door. The old keys that my son and his wife carried would no longer work. I handed the new keys to Margaret, who would give them to the new owners when they took possession the following week. The house would sit empty for a few days, but that wasn't my problem anymore. And when my son and his wife came home from work that evening, the locks had already been changed. I can only imagine their confusion as they stood on the front porch, fumbling with keys that no longer fit. I picture them calling my name, expecting me to come to the door and let them in. I wonder how long it took them to realize that I wasn't inside. I wonder when it dawned on them that something was very, very wrong. By then, I was already in my new townhouse, sitting in my own living room, sipping coffee from my own kitchen, watching the news on my own television. Free. Independent. No longer a burden to anyone. I had left a letter on the kitchen counter, the only explanation they would get. You said I was a burden. You were right. I was burdening myself by staying where I wasn't wanted. The house has been sold. Your real education starts now. Learn to carry your own weight. Dad. Short, direct, and final. No angry accusations, no emotional manipulation, just the facts. That was the day they finally realized. I wasn't the burden. They were. They had been living rent-free in a house they never could have afforded on their own. They had been enjoying financial freedom they had never earned. They had been benefiting from my generosity while treating me like garbage. And now they would have to face the real world, the world where housing costs money, where mortgages have to be paid, where parents aren't always there to fix your problems. Within a week, I heard through the grapevine that they had to move in with her parents. Temporarily, they said. Just until they could figure things out. But I knew better. In this housing market, with their credit history and savings account, temporarily might stretch on for quite a while. My daughter-in-law, who had treated me like an unwelcome guest, was now the unwelcome guest in someone else's home. My son, who had called me a burden, was now the burden on his in-laws. The irony was so perfect it almost felt scripted. Do I feel guilty? Do I regret my actions? Not for a single moment. I gave them every opportunity to treat me with basic human dignity. I bent over backwards to accommodate their needs and preferences. I made myself smaller and smaller, trying to fit into their perfect life without disrupting it. And in return, I got resentment, disrespect, and ultimately, rejection. A burden. That's what they called me. But what is a burden, really? A burden is something you carry that provides no benefit, something that weighs you down without giving anything back. I wasn't a burden. I was their benefactor. I was their safety net. I was their financial security. And they were too blind, too selfish, too ungrateful to see it. Now they know. Now they understand the difference between having a supportive father and actually carrying a burden. Now they're learning what it feels like to struggle, to worry about money, to depend on the charity of others. Now they're discovering what burden really means. I sleep peacefully in my townhouse every night. No tension in the air, no hostile glances, no whispered complaints. Just peace. I cook what I want to eat. I watch what I want to watch on television. I come and go as I please without worrying about inconveniencing anyone. I have neighbors who smile and wave, who occasionally invite me for coffee, who treat me like a human being worthy of respect. Some people might say I was too harsh, that I should have tried to work things out, that family should forgive and forget. But forgiveness is a two-way street. Respect has to be mutual. Love cannot be one-sided forever without destroying the person giving it. I didn't abandon my son. He abandoned me first, emotionally and psychologically. I just made it official. I didn't destroy his life. I removed myself from the equation and let him live it on his own terms. If those terms include struggling financially, well, that's the price of independence. That's the cost of rejecting help. That's what happens when you call your greatest asset a burden. The money from the house sale has given me a comfortable retirement. I've paid off my townhouse, invested wisely, and I have enough to live well for the rest of my days. I travel when I want to. I eat at nice restaurants. I buy books and gadgets and whatever catches my fancy. I'm not wealthy, but I'm comfortable. And most importantly, I'm free. Free from ungrateful children who see generosity as weakness. Free from people who take advantage of love and kindness. Free from the suffocating atmosphere of a house where I was made to feel like an intruder. Free to be myself without apology or accommodation. Sometimes I wonder if my son realizes what he lost. Not just the house, though that was substantial. But the relationship. The support. The unconditional love of a father who would have done anything for him. I wonder if he misses having someone who cared about his well-being, someone who wanted nothing more than to see him happy and successful. But those moments of wondering pass quickly. Because I remember that day, that moment when he looked me in the eyes and called me a burden. I remember the coldness in his voice, the agreement from his wife, the complete lack of recognition for everything I had sacrificed for him. And I remember that I deserve better. Every person deserves better than that. I am not a burden. I am a man who worked hard, saved wisely, and gave generously. I am a father who loved deeply and sacrificed greatly. I am a human being worthy of respect and dignity. And if my own son couldn't see that, then maybe it was time to find people who could. The grocery bags. I still think about those grocery bags sometimes. Such a simple thing, bringing food home for the family. Such a basic act of care and provision. And it was met with such cruelty, such devastating dismissal. Those bags full of food I had carefully selected for their enjoyment became the final symbol of everything that was wrong with our relationship. But you know what? I don't buy groceries for anyone else anymore. I shop for myself, choosing exactly what I want to eat, spending exactly what I want to spend. No more considering other people's preferences or dietary restrictions. No more trying to please people who will never be pleased. Just me, my cart, and my choices. It's liberating in a way I never expected. For so many years, every decision I made was filtered through the lens of what was best for my son, what would make him happy, what would set him up for success. Now I make decisions based on what's best for me. It feels selfish at first, but then I realize it's not selfish at all. It's self-preservation. It's self-respect. It's finally putting myself first after decades of putting everyone else ahead of me. The house is probably nice for the new owners. They seemed like a lovely couple, grateful for the opportunity to buy such a well-maintained home in a good neighborhood. They thanked me genuinely when we met at closing, expressing appreciation for taking such good care of the property. It was refreshing to hear actual gratitude, to be treated with respect and courtesy. I hope they're happy there. I hope they fill it with love and laughter and appreciation for what they have. I hope they never take for granted the gift of a beautiful home, the security of ownership, the peace of mind that comes with a place to call your own. My son and his wife never had that appreciation. They had the security without the struggle, the benefit without the sacrifice. They never had to save for a down payment, never had to qualify for a mortgage, never had to worry about property taxes or maintenance costs. They just walked into paradise and promptly decided that the person who had given it to them was inconvenient. Well, now they know what inconvenient really looks like. Now they understand what it means to be dependent on someone else's generosity. Now they're learning the lessons I tried to shield them from, that housing is expensive, that financial security is fragile, that parents won't always be there to fix your problems. These are hard lessons, but necessary ones. I did them no favors by making their lives too easy. I created adults who expected comfort without contribution, security without sacrifice, benefits without reciprocal respect. Maybe this experience will teach them what I failed to teach them, that everything has a cost, and gratitude is the minimum payment required. I don't hate my son. Hatred takes too much energy, and I'm using all my energy on building a new life for myself. But I don't love him the way I used to either. Love that is constantly rejected, constantly taken for granted, constantly met with resentment and hostility, that love eventually transforms into something else. Self-preservation. Emotional distance. Protective indifference. He's still my son, biologically speaking. But sons are supposed to honor their fathers, supposed to show respect and appreciation for the sacrifices made on their behalf. When they fail to do that, when they actively dishonor and disrespect the person who gave them life and opportunity, then the relationship changes. The obligations change. The expectations change. I fulfilled my obligations as a father. I raised him, educated him, provided for him, gave him every advantage I could manage. I went above and beyond what most fathers are able to do. I gave him a house, for crying out loud. A whole house, free and clear. And in return, I asked for nothing more than basic respect and the chance to be part of his family. That was apparently too much to ask. So now I'm done asking. I'm done giving. I'm done sacrificing. I'm done making myself smaller to fit into other people's lives. I'm done being grateful for scraps of attention from people who should be grateful for my presence. This is my time now. My money, my choices, my life. And for the first time in years, maybe decades, I'm truly happy. Not the complicated, anxious, walking on eggshells kind of existence I had before, but genuine happiness. Peace. Contentment. Freedom. They called me a burden, and in a way, they freed me. They freed me from the burden of loving people who didn't love me back. They freed me from the burden of giving without receiving. They freed me from the burden of caring more about their happiness than my own. So thank you, son. Thank you for showing me exactly where I stood in your life. Thank you for being honest about your feelings, even if that honesty was cruel. Thank you for giving me the motivation I needed to reclaim my dignity and my independence. And thank you for learning, finally, what burden really means.